how to make a cute polka dot surprise spider cake for Halloween.
Let's see what's cooking. Let's get the facts. Let's see what's cooking. It's time for Yo-Yo Max 12.
Step 1, we're going to make the cake balls for the polka dots as well as the spiders. So you'll need a white cake mix that you're going to prepare according to package directions by adding eggs, oil, and water to the mix. And then you're going to divide it up into 3 different bowls. Now, one of the bowls you will tint green. I'm using a bright neon color green for the green, tinting one purple and then one orange. Now, what we're going to have to do is make cake balls for this recipe for the polka dots inside the cake. Polka dots inside the cake will be orange and green. Now, what you're going to need to do is take your cake ball maker if you have one. Now, these cake ball makers, basically it's a mold where you can make a ball of cake with it. You just fill up the little molds. You'll need about 25 green ones, 25 orange ones, and about, let's say, 6 to 8 of the purple ones. Now, I didn't have a cake bowl mold, nor did I want to go out and buy one. What I did have already in my house were these brownie pop molds. Now, the brownie pop mold is not it's not a ball, but the bottom of the mold, and you'll see a little bit closer here, the bottom of the mold is actually like the half of a ball, if you were to take a ball and cut it in half. So what I did was, I took the batter, I put about 1.5 teaspoons in the bottom, and then I baked them at 350 until they were done. And I suggest you bake them until they are done, not brown. You don't want the brown color on them. So try to bake them so they're done, but not brown. Now, if you look at them, they kind of look like a gumdrop. So what I did is I just took a serrated knife and I just cut the bottom of that off. So now what you have essentially is half of a ball. And if you put those two together, you will get an entire circle or an entire ball. Now, for the purple ones, I did kneaded balls. I just kneaded the half shapes because the purple ones are the spiders and they're going to go on top of the cake. They're not going to be inside of the cake because the inside of the cake is already purple. So once you've baked up all of your cake balls, you're going to make some spiders. Now, if you're using a cake ball mold, you're going to cut that ball in half to get these little shapes. I didn't have to cut them in half because I was making halves. In that bowl that I'm using the brush with, that contains some corn syrup and a little bit of orange extract. And I'll put the ingredient amounts in the description box below. You're going to brush that on the half cake ball. And then you're going to dip it into some colored sugar that matches the cake ball color. So orange cake, orange sugar. And then the recipe says, take a little bit of that corn syrup, put it on the back of the eyeball, and you use that as a glue to glue them to the little spiders. And it didn't work very well, and they ended up all falling off, and I'm going to show you that later on. There's a different way of doing this, and I'm going to tell you later. So don't even bother putting eyeballs on these little buggers at this point in time. Wait until we get to the end of the recipe, and I'm going to show you why. So I ended up making about 5 or 6 of each of those colors. Now, here we go with the cake. The cake is another white cake mix. Now, I initially thought I needed to add the ingredients that are listed on the back of the box, but that's not quite true. You have to add some extra ingredients. So please look in the description box below this video, and it'll have a complete list of the ingredients you need to add to that cake box mix. One of those extra things is a box of grape Jello. This is the 4 serving size. Put that in there, and you're going to blend all of that together, and you're going to see you're going to end up with a kind of a lilac-y light purple color, but I wanted this to be a bit deeper purple, so I added in a few drops of gel paste food coloring. You could also use liquid for this if you'd like. And I ended up with a lovely purple. Keep in mind this is probably going to get a little bit darker after it's baked. And once that was blended, I put 1/4 of that batter in one pan and 1/4 of the batter in the other pan. These are 9-inch cake pans that have been well greased. Now, if you're using the cake ball mold, you'll have these lovely little cake balls, and you won't have to do anything with them except put them in the batter. Mine, I had to put 2 halves together because I was using a brownie pop maker, and I put 2 halves together and pressed it into the batter that's in the bottom of the pan. Now, the original recipe says to use 10 orange and 10 green in each pan. And when I started putting them in, I thought that would be too many, but as it turns out, that's probably the perfect amount. So I suggest you put 10 orange and 10 green, and even if they look a little crowded in the pan, that's okay. And I'm going to show you why that's the case as we move on here a little bit. Now, I had some problems with some of these because they were two halves. They had a tendency to want to fall over, and then they would kind of split open. So I just had to keep kind of rearranging them. And as it baked, a lot of them did fall over. But you know what? And the final result, you could barely see the seam in most of the balls, polka dots in the cake. And the purple batter didn't get in between them, so it worked out quite well. All right, so once your cake balls are all arranged, then you're going to start to add the remainder of the purple batter on, and just kind of pour it on the top. Now, if I would have put 10 of each of those cake balls in there, it would have been less space to fill, and the purple batter probably would have went to the level of the cake balls or maybe a little bit over. But because I put fewer cake balls in there, the batter didn't quite fill up the pan as much as I thought it would. Now, it didn't really matter, as you'll see, it turned out okay, but one of the reasons why you need to put at least 20 balls in each of these pans is that way the purple batter is going to come up to the right level on the polka dots. So I'm filling up the pans, and then I realized, you know what, if I put extra cake balls in here, maybe it'll bring that level up. Like it's kind of displacing the batter and making it rise a bit. So I added a couple extra in. And then I put these in the oven at 350 degrees for about 25 minutes until the cake was done. Until when you insert a toothpick inside the purple layer, it comes out clean. Now, as most cakes will do in pans, they dome up a little bit. And because I'm doing a layer cake, I wanted them to be flat. So I used a sharp knife here, and I just trimmed off the domed part of the cake just to make it a little bit more flat. And as you can see, there are my little cake balls all spread out in the batter. And you can't really see the seam in them. You can see a little line in some of them, but the purple batter did not infiltrate between the cake ball halves, and that's what I was kind of worried about. Now on to the frosting. Now the frosting is just a basic buttercream. That is 1.5 cups of butter that's at room temperature. I use salted butter because I like that flavor in my buttercream. If you don't like the little tiny bit of salty flavor to a buttercream, then use unsalted butter. Mix up your butter for 2-3 minutes until it's nice and fluffy and smooth. And then you're going to start to add in 4 cups of powdered sugar, also called icing sugar or confectioner's sugar, a little bit at a time until it's all combined. And the reason you do it a little at a time is that you don't make a big mess in your kitchen. Once all that powdered sugar has been added, you're going to add about a tablespoon of milk or cream and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And you'll add a little bit more cream or milk until the frosting gets to a texture that you like. A spreadable consistency that's not too thick and not too runny. And then when it gets to that point, you're ready to add some orange food color. I'm adding orange paste food coloring, and I added enough until I like the color of orange. Now, one thing about buttercream frosting, that it will darken up when the frosting sits and dries a little bit. So just make it to a shade that's just a tiny bit lighter than you'd like it to be, because it will darken up a bit as the frosting sets. So I blended that in, and the frosting was light and fluffy and so good. Let's put this cake together. That's 1/2 of the cake. I took a good 1/3 of that frosting, put it right on top, and then I spread it around to the edges using an offset spatula. Now, if you plan on decorating a few cakes, you should buy an offset spatula. It just makes things so easy. It's not really necessary. You can just use a butter knife for this, or even a rubber scraper. But the offset spatula works really well. Then I added the second layer, and then I added a really big glob of frosting on the top, and then I start to spread it out across the top and down the sides. Now, I didn't crumb coat this cake. Crumb coating means you put just a little thin layer of frosting on the cake first to seal in the crumbs and let the frosting dry, and then you add more. I didn't have any major crumb issues with this cake. It actually worked out pretty well without a crumb coat. So now you're going to spread it around as smooth as you can along the top and the sides, trying to make sure that the frosting's equal thickness all over the cake. Now, those of you that decorate a lot of cakes, it's quite clear to you that I am not a professional cake decorator by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not that great at it because I don't do it very often, but I managed to get a relatively smooth finish to this, and I'm going to show you how I did that. Okay, now to make this nice and smooth, what I do is I'll take that offset spatula, I'll run it under the tap with some hot water, clean it off completely, and I won't shake off all the water. I'll leave a little bit of the water on the offset spatula, and then you drag it across the cake, and it actually makes a very nice smooth finish. And if you're really good at this, you can get a smooth finish that's probably going to be as smooth and as pretty as a fondant cake, but will taste better. So there's the cake, mostly smooth, pretty much almost completely smooth. Then I took a ruler and I made some lines across tape, just as a guide, not deep lines, just for a guideline. This is what I call my kitchen ruler that gets washed in the dishwasher whenever I use it, so don't have to worry about it contaminating anything. I made 8 lines across the cake. And then I used some black frosting to draw them out. Now, you can make your own black frosting, but it's so hard to get a really true, nice dark black color that I ended up buying it in these tubes and for small jobs like this, and it's fine. Now, what's great about this brand is that the decorator tip and a coupler fits on the tube, so you don't have to put it in anything else, so it works great. Then you're going to draw more web details going around the cake, and you can put these as close or as far apart as you want. I just kept going until the whole top of the cake was covered. And then I drew more little webs going down the cake. I made some really short and some really long because the little spiders are actually going to stick to the side of the cake. And here are little spiders that we made. I'm going to just press them into the frosting. They stick quite nicely. And the only trouble I had with these were the eyes were falling off. So what I did is I ended up putting those eyes back on using a little bit of black frosting, and I ended up having to do that to all of my little spiders because all the eyes were falling off. Then take some of the spiders and place them on the top of the cake. Just arrange them. There's more eyes falling off. Just arrange them on top of the cake, as many or as few as you'd like. And then you're going to arrange them on the side of the cake. Now just try to make sure you kind of move the colors around so that you have a variety of color. So you don't have 2 green ones side by side. And some of the spiders were up high, some of them were down low, some of them were in the middle. It just gives it a little bit of variety. I use maybe about 4 or 5 of each color spider. So I did have quite a few of these cake ball halves left over, and I'll probably use those for another recipe another time. And then keep going until you have as many spiders as you want. And then the final touch was to add the legs to the spiders on the side of the cake. And I use that same black frosting, and you can make them curvy, straight. You can make them short or long, whatever you'd like. All the way around. And I decided to add the legs to the spiders on the top as well. Now, I found this idea in a magazine, and they did not put legs on their spiders on the top of the cake. And I think the reason for that was it was kind of confusing having black legs and black web, and maybe they kind of get lost with one another. But I thought they looked funny without legs, so I added them on the top, and it ended up looking pretty good, I think. So I was really happy with the way this cake turned out. I actually served it at a family dinner, and everyone loved it. These little spiders are absolutely adorable. I just love them. Now the inside of the cake, you can see the polka dots. Now if I would have used more cake balls, there probably would have been more color inside there. And as you can see, you can't really see the seam in the cake balls per se. Now the flavor of this cake, it has a light grape flavor because of that Jell-O mixture you're putting in there, but not really super strong. It was delicious, and it actually went very well with the frosting. So this was a fun cake to put together. I really enjoyed this one, and I hope you give this one a try for your Halloween party. Now, if you're looking for another spider idea, here is one made with a Ferrero Rocher chocolate in the center and some Pocky legs on a cupcake. Link in the description and on your screen. Thanks for watching.